Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia
You're a
Economics.
freak.
Yes, it is that time of the week again, I think is what Dave just said, for Denver Dave's weekly silver and gold market update. Dave, it's been a couple weeks, since Silverfest, and we were playing all the Silverfest videos. So, there were some hot ones with you in there. Obviously.
Stop.
But it feels good to be back at it live today on a Thursday afternoon. I think this is going to get posted on Sunday. I'm going to get you back on Thursday nights going forward. I'm going to start telling, we have all these companies want to come on, but I'm going to tell them, not Thursday. Got something on Thursday, unless they want to come into the Denver Dave mining stock. What is the grill room, or what do they call it on one of those reality shows, like he's on the hot chair, or, the hot seat, or whatever.
That would be fun. That would actually be a good show.
Yeah, and you could have Denver Dave try and grill the company, see if it holds up. And believe Uncle Scotty from EMX is either him or David Cole, I believe, is the first company that is taking up the Denver Dave option. So we'll have that to look forward to. I know you're a big EMX fan, Dave.
I have nothing. I love that stock. I love that company.
Well, that's what I continue to hear. Actually was talking some royalties today. Anyway, Dave, I stacked the deck in my favor today because as we learned at Silverfest, I think part of the appeal, like, fans love seeing Denver Dave riled up, and I'm not going to disappoint. I'm going to do my part. We'll take a quick look in your first call since Silverfest. Gold on the kit code just under 1900. Silver goes up, silver goes down. Silver is once again around the $24 mark. Although, had an interesting couple of days, and Dave, perhaps you could give me a minute to lay out the context here. Thought of how to handle this. Not to care too much. Although, to some degree, we have some critics. I'm sure you remember, Dave, that for years, anyone who said the gold and silver markets were manipulated is a complete Fruit Loop, who's, running around with kites and alien goggles and, is just nuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have JP Morgan. Do I have this one pulled up? Was fined $920 million for manipulating the market, right?
If you consider spoofing manipulation, sure.
Well, I guess that's what we'll be digging into today, because I find it but would you agree, though, that, you said if it was manipulated or anyway, you were crazy, yet here it is now that we find out, yes, it was indeed manipulated. It wasn't a small fine, yet I find what's interesting, I have a critic out there, apparently, I'm sure more than one, and that's okay. But I find it's like the argument has shifted. Well, they said it was manipulated but not suppressed. So if you remember, I have my petition of suggesting why JP Morgan, based on everything that's happened here, certainly the evidence I've uncovered, as well as many others, I'm sure, let alone what we don't know about. I laid that out here as clearly as possible. There were pieces of the Bart Chilton thing. And anyway, his response, and I left it nameless because I didn't want this to be, the point of this to be nastier, but I don't know, Dave, and I'd love to get your comment, because I'm not saying this guy's writing this to you, but understand this petition is misleading. Basically, the heart getting at confused the manipulation, which did happen, with price suppression, which did not happen. Although I like this part, why no clamor petition to suspend JP Morgan from trading treasuries? I'm all on board with that. But I guess I wonder, and I hear this pop up in many corners, and I wonder if it's a matter of semantics, whether you call it spoofing or suppressing the gold price. To me, and I'll be clear and as accountable as possible, my net argument at the end of the day is that if you have a system where someone can either write contracts or spoof it, but use an unlimited supply of paper gold, and we've seen, I wouldn't dispute that a bank can manipulate it higher, but you saw 2011 weekend in September, in the middle of the night, Labor Day, the Swiss say they're going to peg the franc to the euro, which removed the last safe haven currency. Then you saw it spoofed, suppressed, paddled the wagon, whatever you want to call it. So anyway, I'll stop there and let you comment on any of that you feel like commenting on.
It's every time I see the government go after these big banks, they end up, giving them a wrist slapping fine and let them continue going about their business, right? And it's not the first time it's happened in the precious metals market. Granted, a $920 million fine is a little more than the standard wrist slapping. I really did not read all the details of that whole situation because it's irrelevant. All right. And, second of all, I do recall the last time JP Morgan was given a pretty large fine. And keep in mind, these fines are the cost of doing business for these guys. And 920 million is minuscule. 920 million is probably, somewhat close to what they make from the interest they get paid by the Fed on keeping excess reserves with the Fed, right? So it's the cost of doing business for them. But the last time they had a fine, I want to say I forget how big it was, and it might have been Goldman. It was either JPM or Goldman, and there were some loopholes on how the fine was to be paid, and it wasn't going to be that shock and awe amount in cash or fully in cash. So, again, like I said, I didn't really read the details of the actual fine, how they have to pay it, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Spoofing is not the problem. That's not the source of manipulation in the market. However, I will say you could certainly use spoofing in large quantities, which these big banks are certainly capable of delivering, to suppress the price. What's the difference? This guy is saying, it's manipulation, but not price suppression. What's the difference? What in the hell is the difference? Is this guy some kind of moron? Price suppression is definitionally manipulation. Manipulation definitionally in this context is price suppression. That's the only reason that the banks, acting on behalf of the central banks, acting on behalf of a directive from the BIS, it's the only reason that they manipulate the market is to suppress the price.
Dave, I got to stop you right there. It's conspiracy theory, bro. Because the petition claims suppression as part of the injury that JPM harmed people who bought gold and silver expecting the price to go up. Spoofing works both ways without an agenda. But this BS story continues to tickle the ears of gold bugs. You tickling the ears of gold bugs, David? Stop that.
It's not tickling the ears. Look, I don't really care what this guy has to say. It's mind over matter. I don't mind, and he doesn't matter. I can guarantee you I've been studying this market and researching it for a lot longer than this guy, whoever it is, okay? And I've been called worse than a conspiracy theorist over the last 20 years.
I don't believe that. No.
Look, the facts rest with themselves. And people who don't think the market is manipulated haven't looked at the facts. You can go to the GATA website and go through the archive. There are letters between Henry Kissinger and his advisors in, I think, 1971, 2 or 3, right in there, where they openly discuss the need to redirect institutional money out of physical gold and into some form of non-physical gold. That's why gold futures started trading in 74. They weren't even around until then. And they talk about the it would be problematic if large institutions started buying a lot of physical gold. That's in writing. You can go to the GATA website and see the letters.
Or you could get Paul
Or go
Volcker's.
to the the Library of Congress or the National Archives and pull up the letters yourself. But why go to that trouble when GATA has them?
I thought it
Paul
was
Volcker has said more than once.
in his autobiography, he talked,
Yes.
actually prevent the price from rising. We sold gold. I mean, what?
Yes. Yes. That's why the Bank of England unloaded half of its gold right at the bottom of the market. Brown's bottom, as it was called. Most people don't even know what Brown's bottom is because they weren't around when it happened. That's what drove the price of gold down to $250.
Yeah, I actually just had a British guest on the show a couple days ago.
Alan Greenspan in front of Congress. You can pull the video up on YouTube. I think it was 1996, sometime in the mid 90s, and Ron Paul was grilling him about inflation and the price of gold and interest rates, and he said, because he's like, isn't the price of gold going to rise and reflect the fact that your policies are inflationary? He said, we have the ability to lease gold, and manage the price of gold. And now that's a paraphrase of what he said, but if you want, my jaw dropped the first time I saw it. He basically admitted that the Fed can intervene in the gold market to suppress the price.
Yeah, and Dave, I think you nailed it, what you touched on there, where it's like a lot of the time, people who raise that argument, because I had, as you know, I was a little not thrilled when there was someone who messaged me and it made it seem as if it was either, and I guess what bothers me, or maybe not bothers me, but what I think I'm pretty open-minded, and trying to get to the truth is my primary driver, nothing else. And if I'm wrong or have a blind spot, I would hope somebody would point it out. I guess I don't like so much when someone accuses me of doing something out of integrity, or that I'm, every company that comes on here, any of the sponsors, I try and phrase things as appropriately and clearly. You know me pretty well. I think there's plenty of people who have seen that I haven't had the easiest last couple of years getting all these things together. So I guess that's what, I don't know, I would like to defend my integrity there. But I guess the other thing is, it was interesting. There was someone who sounded like he was saying either that me or my guests were lying. And then when I asked what he thought about what Bart Chilton said, where he confirmed so much of what has long been alleged, and when he confirmed that JP Morgan took over the Bear Stearns position, that the position was over the allowed limits, that they were given a temporary waiver to reduce it, and they came back and they had made it larger. And this is, in the midst of historic interest rate cuts, banks failing, silver is rallying, and within days of that JP Morgan deal, it was like 3 days later is when it starts falling from 21 through Lehman Brothers imploding. Andy Schechtman in the book, he talks about how people were buying silver, yet they couldn't get any product. So silver goes from 21 to 9, gold from 1,000 to 700, at the time where Bart Chilton confirms that the position was made larger and there's a shortage of physical silver. And do you know what he said in response to that?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
He was not familiar with who Bart Chilton was. So to what you said, and I'm not trying to call anybody out in particular, but I find, I don't just go out there and say this stuff. And I remember years ago, before I started doing this, thinking, gee, Chris, are you really going to go all in putting your name on this? If you're wrong, or is there something you could be missing? That's how I think, and I get it. And I appreciate that people are on edge and checking, because I know there are people who get paid to say things that they don't believe. And I understand that, which is why, even when people call and want to discuss these things, mainly because I do want to provide the best possible research to my audience, to my friends, to anyone. And so I just thought that sometimes I'll bet the guy that wrote the Twitter messages is not aware. And Dave, I'd like to play one clip here. And by the way, I did hear from Sherry Chilton, Bart's wife. and hopefully, I don't know if she's going to come on the show, and I hope I'm not inappropriate to say this, just I was excited to hear from her. I believe we are going to talk, and here's a clip of Bart Chilton that I want to play just a small bit of it, and then we'll let you comment on that. Again, I appreciate you mentioning the spoofing. Curious, because my understanding of how some of the manipulation has occurred is that, if silver is trading $20.05, there's a lot of stop orders placed around the $20 handle. So often if the price can get pushed a little bit, then you get a lot of those high frequency algorithms kicking in, and then you'll see a drop, with many feeling that people kind of nudging a little are then able to buy lower. Does that sound like a reasonably accurate portrayal to put it in perspective to folks, or would you phrase it differently?
Well, it's a good portrayal, but it's a very good portrayal. But it's actually also.
And then he explains the mechanics of spoofing for about 3 minutes and finishes with
in nanoseconds. So the difference in your description is that today, when a market moves because of a spoof, it can move a lot more.
Dave, this is September.
I'm assuming
6th.
He says today, but he's referring to the fact that hedge fund algos are in action now versus 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I was saying he was just that with all the leverage, algos, everything, that now when you have a spoof, things
and
move
high
more.
Frequency pipelines. And
here's the chart of September 6, 2011, when gold had crossed 1900, following U.S. downgrade, following QE2. And I wonder if things weren't going off the tracks back then, because there's the Swiss announcement was sometime like right around here. Remember, I got that Wall Street Journal alert. I'm like, Jesus, gold can go through $2,000 tonight. And then you see this. Now, whether I think spoofing is at the heart of what's going on here, I think Bart Chilton just pretty clearly said that probably whatever. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that he might define this as a spoof. Any thoughts on any of that?
Like I said, I mean, certainly in large quantities, you can put fake offerings out in the market and scare away buyers. But that's amateur stuff. I mean, anyone who's traded institutionally, as I have, right? I traded junk bonds. They're not the most liquid markets, but there were some liquid issues, and you could do that with this. If you were trying to push a market lower for whatever reason, it might be probably for me, whenever I had to do it, it was to cover a short that I was worried about. You're going to go in and you're going to, it's like what JP Morgan did in 2008. You're going to go in and you're going to slam the bids and try and scare away buyers that way. And in this particular case, the banks know where the hedge fund stop losses are set. The banks are the COMEX. All right. They have access to the internal computer data. The public does not. All right. So, in the hedge funds, you can kind of look at a chart and kind of guesstimate where the stop losses are set. But anyway, the point here being is, if you're trying to cover a big short, you're going to go in and you're going to, or drive the market lower for whatever reason, you're going to go in and short the crap out of it and just keep hitting bids. And eventually the bids go away. And then if you're trying to buy the market, then you come in and you put in offerings below the market. Now, in this case, with the HFT trading, or the algos, once the stop losses are triggered, sells become automatic. And when you have a sell, unless you've got a sell, a limit, a stop loss with a limit in there, you're once the stop loss is triggered, that's a market order. So the market could fall 5%, and if you haven't been executed yet, you might get executed rather, right where your stop loss was, you might get executed 5% below the market. That's how you push down a market. That's how you manipulate a market. That's not spoofing. That's outright manipulation. That's illegal trading.
Yep. And again, just in my defense, I would point out that I laid out what I'd spent years calibrating my definition of what I thought happened. I've not seen JP Morgan spoof in person, although, Bart didn't say, yeah, that's close. He seemed to agree that. So
There's other sources of manipulation besides, throwing bale loads of COMEX paper into the system and hitting bids and triggering stop losses. Let's talk about central bank gold leasing. Let's talk about all the OTC derivatives that we really know nothing about, other than the bank reported value, net value, which is the net exposure. I want to see the nominal value exposure to these things. I want to see who the counterparties are. Okay, so there's that whole world. There's also hypothecation. You're JP Morgan and you operate a gold vault in London, right? And you've got unallocated customer gold sitting in there. Oops, the Indians are buying hand over fist right now, and we're going to have to make some deliveries to India. So you take that unallocated gold and you say, we'll just borrow these bars, ship them to the refinery in Switzerland. They'll refine kilo bars and send them to India. You're short physical gold now. That's a big problem. I mean, it was self-admitted by the industry. Jeffrey Christian back in, 2010 at the infamous Bart Chilton GATA hearing, right? He admitted that the paper to physical ratio in London was probably 100-to-1. So that's manipulation also.
Yeah, well,
I don't need to give all these examples that people may believe or not believe. I mean, I've seen them with my own eyes. I can just go and look at the official directives, the letters that, were circulating the White House back in the early 70s.
You're talking about this list, I'm assuming, on the GATA website. Yeah, I thought that was nice of Chris and Bill to dedicate a large portion of their free time to here's the documentation. So yeah, like you said, everything is in there. Dave, did you see though that as a thank you for their great years of service at First Majestic, we are at Silverfest. Sorry, I'm pulling up the website simultaneously. Bill and Chris, we gave them the First Majestic Silver Cube.
Oh, nice.
Show you in a second. Yeah, this baby is, I think, 27. It comes, you get 27 in the cube. It's like you could roll dice with the thing too. It looks pretty slick.
Wait,
I got one. Yara
what's up
got
with the back order?
Huh?
They're on back order now?
Well, everybody wants silver. Although, Dave, I did find an artist that can make the Kranzler ounce at some good pricing, which
Stop. I really don't want that.
Can I make one for a Kranzler ounce for myself? You don't have to be
sure, absolutely.
I just
knock yourself out.
If I want to invite people over to play poker, we could have Kranzler silver poker chip sets. It's like I'll raise 10 Kranzlers against your flush draw. So let's see here, Dave. I had a few more JP Morgan jokes before we go. I think it was Nick Bralia at Silverfest said something like, if the COVID lockdown forces bankers to stay inside their houses again, what is JP Morgan going to do?
What's the answer?
Insider trading.
Oh.
And on Twitter, I think I tagged you on this one. I was thinking maybe if they have like a softball team, it could be JP Morgan and the Spoofers. Although
I did see that.
Even better than that, that $920 million fine, do they just submit that to the Fed's discount window? And
they're going to pay it with some of the billion ounces of gold that what's his face claims they have, Ted Butler.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. I don't even care. All I can tell you is that the manipulation isn't going to stop. That whole, go after JP Morgan and find some low level, fine them for letting low level traders spoof the market. It's kabuki theater. It's a cover-up job, because now people look at that and say, "Oh yeah, good job, government. You are regulating the precious metals market and the trading in it," which they're not.
Well, I hear you there, Big Daddy. And fortunately, as the antidote to all of that, your friend Yara, she knows you like the American Silver Eagles.
Love it.
So I see he's cranky the entire episode. Then I mentioned Yara. Now he's smiling. He's like, "Oh, Silver Eagles. Yara's gonna send some." Well,
I
yes,
like
Dave.
silver pandas too. I bought a bunch of those in the last couple of weeks.
Ooh, I actually have a nice one that Andy gave me, where one side's in color. Speaking of which, I want to get one of those ones that you got, that one of your fan club members sent you from Australia, from the Perth Mint, with that abalone like hologram looking thing. I want one of those. Those were.
It's an opal, and it's in the shape of the Australia. But I think on
What are those called?
They have them with kangaroos. It's a 1 ounce silver. I think it's the equivalent of a master strike coin. It's a numismatic coin, and I think they're all sold out. I
would still be long the Kranzler ounce opal coin spread myself. But again, Dave, I asked Yara, who does the bullion portion of Arcadia, along with Miles Franklin. I said, for my man Dave, he's been educating Keynesians around the globe, helping. Actually, Dave, you didn't tell people about something, but I gotta bring it up here. Yeah, there. Thank you, Robin. It's beautiful. Dave, what is that called? I want to get one. I want one. She sent one for you and one for my mom. I gotta get one for me.
It's a Perth Mint opal.
Perth Mint opal.
Yeah. I think that's you look for it under silver coins.
All righty, and Dave, along with that,
here, this is a silver proof opal coin.
Yes,
it's got its own number. It's numismatic. It'd be worth a lot more 5 years down the road.
Well, and Dave, I asked Yara for a silver special. I didn't want something that just like any rookie would like, but something that would get Denver Dave Kranzler picking up the phone, something hot enough that it would actually make global warming a legitimate concern. So Dave, just for you, if anyone wants to email Arcadia at Miles Franklin for the Denver Dave $4.99 over spot American Silver Eagle special, Dave's buddy Yara, who many of you met at Silverfest, who helps keep Arcadia running, would be happy.
Lovely Yara.
Yeah, or if you have questions or anything, she's happy to help. And just like Dave is happy to help. Dave, I appreciate you getting my back today on that one. If you see my background, I had like my trading floor picture. So it was like, we go in like trading floor badass mode and duke things out like in the old days. But I don't know, maybe, again, that is the one thing I will promise on this show. I could have some blind spot, or maybe I'm a complete moron and I can't see it. But I would thoroughly dispute those gentlemen who felt if I was in any way being misleading, that were not fully honest. I would. So I appreciate you having
anyone who doesn't acknowledge that the market is manipulated is either ignorant of the facts, tragically naive, or somehow a beneficiary of the manipulation.
The defense rests. Dave, we'll round up Ronan Manley, James Anderson, and a few others, and we'll take on JP Morgan and the spoofers in a big friendly softball game. We'll kick some ass. So I thank you. Another great episode of Denver Dave's weekly silver and gold special. That's why, folks, if you had fun and you enjoyed this, hit that share button. And if you want some Silver Eagles at $4.99 over spot, that's Arcadia at milesfranklin.com. And to find out more, yes, sir.
Real quickly, in my next issue of Mining Stock Journal,
Is that when I finally get to find out about the secret silver stock?
It's not a secret silver stock, but it's a company with a silver project that has the potential to be massive, like Silvercrest metal scale. So
it would be like the Kranzler of the silver stock set.
it's if you're a silver bug, it's like a silver bug orgy, a potential orgy. This now they still have to do a lot more drilling, but my sniffer on this one tells me it's probably a good idea, and I'll have that in my next mining stock journal, which will be out next Thursday.
Yeah, well, certainly a very vibrant graphic metaphor to bring the risk profile of the stock to life. Dave, I thank you for that. And if you'd like to know why some of Dave's silver orgy stocks are worth looking into, Annie Scheckman provided an update of what's going on the physical level of the silver market. And you don't even have to go anywhere because it's coming your way now.